Welcome to the Man Narrative Podcast. I'm your host, Yafa Ares. The following is a conversation with Eric Partaker. Eric helps CEOs, entrepreneurs, and leaders reach their full potential, become better leaders, and build better businesses. Within his approach, he draws from his time advising Fortune 50 CEOs at McKinsey. His experience helping build up Skype's multi-billion-dollar success story and his own entrepreneurial journeys. Together with behavioural science from Stanford University, as well as techniques from the world of elite sports and the military, areas where peak performance is key. Hi Eric, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for having me on today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure. So thanks for coming to the Man Narrative podcast. Let's dive right into it. So you have quite interesting background, and maybe tell our listeners, about who you are and your background, even though maybe like the show, my guests need no introductions, but go for it.
Yeah, no problem. So I've done quite a few different things in life. So I started off as a strategy consultant with McKinsey and Company in both their Chicago and Oslo offices. So I'm half American, half Norwegian. Thereafter, I ran a McKinsey-sponsored nonprofit focused on stimulating entrepreneurship and new businesses throughout Norway. And then after that, I joined Skype in its very early days. So we were about 30 or so people, and helped with the growth of that company, and we grew to about 500 people. We had a exit to eBay during that same time for about $2.6 billion. And then after that, I was thinking about what to do next. I was missing Mexican food, having grown up on it in Chicago. And so then I built what became an award-winning chain and brand of Mexican restaurants in the UK called Chilango. And these days, I work with over 30 founder CEOs of a wide array of companies, but mostly in the tech, online, or digital space, helping them scale not just their companies, but also themselves and their leadership, and all the while without sacrificing their health and well-being.
That's awesome. And yeah, I can testify. I've been to I live in London, and I've been to Chilango quite a few times. I love Mexican food too, super delicious. So yeah, well done for successfully founding an amazing restaurant chain company on Mexican food. So I think in 2019, you've received an award named CEO of the Year. Would you like to tell our listeners what it means in practice and probably why you have won this award a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I noticed, as a lot of founders do, that it's leadership is tough, and it's in hindsight, it's easy to start a company. It's much more different to become that company's CEO and to lead a company. And so I worked really hard on my own leadership ability. I studied quite a lot about leadership, worked very closely with my team at the time, worked very closely with my advisors at the time, just trying to improve my leadership qualities, my decisiveness, my reliability, my ability to communicate with the various stakeholders in surrounding the company. And a combination of our results at the time and all of those things wrapped together led to the receipt of that award. So it was at the Business Excellence Forum, and we were excited to be shortlisted for the award. And on that evening, we were thrilled when it was announced that it had gone to us. So it was a very, very exciting moment.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I'm always fascinated by, I guess, when it comes to leadership, at the end you're dealing with people and cultures, and you have an interesting background. So do you think having this mixture of North America combined with Scandinavian heritage influence how you lead your teams?
I would say it did, because I have quite an open view. I would say I have a combination of an American approach to entrepreneurship and business, but mixed together with the Norwegian kind of openness to the world and that kind of curiosity into other other cultures and and the willingness and the want to kind of just welcome everyone with open arms. So it's kind of like the mixture of those two things together.
That's interesting, and yeah, I mean, we cannot disregard our heritage and how I think it impacts in nice ways how we dealing with people and how we inspire and how we lead teams. So tell us, give us the secret sauce. How do you build? What's the secrets of high performing teams and individuals?
Oh gosh, I mean, it's such a huge subject. So I think when people typically think about building high performing teams or peak performance or high performance, whatever you want to refer to it as, there's a troubling stat to kind of bring into the picture, which is that if we define peak performance as operating at your full potential, operating up to your fullest capabilities, because what can you do beyond that, right? It's, if you're at your full, you're at your full. So if that's peak performance, and then if we then look to Abraham Maslow, so Abraham Maslow, preeminent psychologist in the US, and he came up with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and in his research, he said that our path to deepest fulfillment lies in reaching our fullest potential. But the shocking stat that he presented to the world was that in his research, he estimated only 2% of people operate to their full capabilities. So 98% of people are not playing as big of a game that they could be, whether that's in their personal life or professional life, wherever it may be. The vast majority of the world is just not playing up to their full capabilities. So when we think about that, and we then connect that to high performing teams, I think most people immediately think of high performance from the team point of view, like immediately just thinking of the team as a whole. And I like to think of it, step back a bit more and think of, well, if you want to achieve peak performance in the team, we should get each person individually playing to their fullest abilities. And I talk about this in my recent book, The 3 Alarms. I talk about how our path to peak performance lies in what I call IPA. So like the beer, but better for you. And it's the I stands for identity, the P is for productivity, and the A is for anti-fragility. And I really think if you get those 3 things right across your health, across your wealth, both making the money and what you do with it, and across your relationships. So if you get your identity, productivity, and anti-fragility right across your health, wealth, and relationships, I think that is provides a framework and a path for you to kind of close that gap between your current and best self.
Okay. So would you like maybe, I think, well, you wrote a book and I'm sure it's worth a couple of minutes on it, surely. So would you like to develop a bit more for listeners around these 3 pillars, the IPA, and maybe
Sure.
where you find your inspiration, whether it's obviously the practical experience that you have, and maybe some of the research that you found, and maybe things from other disciplines. I speak regularly to athletes or people from military and sometimes leaders learn a lot from, I guess, these disciplines too. So would you like to expand a bit more on the IPAs?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we could start with identity. And the reason I start there is because it's impossible for us to become, a better version of ourselves if we're going to continue to be the person that we've always been. So we have to assume a new identity. And really, for me, this rests in the fact that we all know how to do it, number one, because as children, for example, we all could change into superheroes. We could all, assume a new identity. And the magical thing that would happen is that when we did that, our behavior would just follow the identity. You didn't have to put on like a Wonder Woman costume and then, go to Wonder Woman training class to figure out how to behave. Or put a Superman costume on and then have to take Superman courses to figure out how to behave. Once you took that identity on as a child, you just immediately acted as if you were that person. So much of what I teach with regard to identity just relates back to that it's really nothing new. It's more about remembering an ability that you had as a child. and that behavior will follow the identity. So what I do in this regard, simple little technique, is I think about my best self across the health front, the wealth front, and the relationship front. I think of the superhero version of me in each of those. I give that superhero version of me a name, a phrase, something that means something to me. And then I set an alarm on my phone to cue that identity at the time of day that would most benefit from being powered by that best self version of me. So let me explain. So at 6:30 a.m., the first alarm goes off on my phone and it says World Fitness Champion. I'll never be one, but that's the version of me that goes into the gym. That version of me goes to the gym whether I feel like it or not. That version of me does my best in the gym whether I feel like it or not. So it's not me going in, it's that version of me going in. So identity, drives behavior, or behavior follows identity. At 9 a.m., the next alarm for me goes off and it says world's best CEO, because that's how I want to think of myself as I'm starting my day. How decisive, inspiring, and reliable would I be if I was acting from that vantage point? And then last but not least, at 6:30 p.m., the last alarm of the day goes off and it says world's best husband and father, to prompt the question, how would the world's best husband and father walk through that door right now? So really, these three identities across my health, wealth, and relationships are a form of intentionality. They are a form of me setting a target and using that to guide my behavior. And it doesn't always go right. There's many times when you have that identity in mind and then your behavior doesn't match the identity. But the beauty is that those moments you become much more painfully aware of those moments because you're shooting for something good, right? So when you typically just go through your day and you don't think of what best looks like in the areas of life that matter most, well, it's very hard to measure then whether you're performing, well or not. So that's a little, taste of, how I think about things on the identity front.
I really love it. It's very practical and such a great reminders. I will implement it and let you know how it goes. It's and also it reminds me on the relationship front and anything really, what Esther Perel, and maybe you know her, she's a prominent psychotherapist and she's working in the realm of relationships, but also work relationships. And yeah, she mentioned something around that sometimes, unfortunately, people give the best version of themselves throughout the day, but then when going home, they just bring the leftovers. Yeah. And I guess your last 6 p.m. reminder will be greatly beneficial for anyone there. In terms of just continuing around the book and maybe just some of the side projects you worked on, I think you're also interested in anything that can help this model around maybe neuroscience and design productivity. Would you like to share some tips around that for listeners to help them implement the framework that you just described and just be better performance in individuals?
Yeah, sure. So I could talk a little bit about productivity. The first thing is to recognize, well, where does productivity start? And a productive day never begins the day of, it begins the night before. And it begins by being able to close down your day in the right way. So at the end of each day, I shut my day down by deciding, well, what are the top 3 things I'm going to do the next day? And I schedule those in my calendar as appointments with myself. So rather than having, some empty space in my calendar and say a to-do list of 37 items to the side, and then when I have the empty space, I look at the list and I go, okay, well, what am I going to do? I don't have to waste any time doing that because I've already decided and I've already scheduled that in my calendar. The next thing I do is just make sure that I'm not looking at any electronics in the 1 hour before bedtime. Because if you do, it will lower your melatonin production by 50%. Melatonin induces sleep. Without a good night of sleep, you will have trouble being productive and staying focused, and you'll be prone to distraction. And then last but not least, I make sure that I get a full 8 hours of sleep. So there's lots of people who think that maybe they need less sleep, they are almost certainly wrong. There's lots of people who think that they have a gene associated with being able to sleep less. They're definitely wrong. I'd bet my money on that in a heartbeat. Simply because your odds of having that gene is equivalent to your odds of being struck by lightning. So you don't have the gene. So what happens is that we get caught in the whole hustle. We get caught in this whole movement of, just work hard and, die when you sleep. And unfortunately, we're actually hastening our path to death by doing that, because when we don't sleep as well as we could, not only does it hamper our productivity in the short term, but it leaves us more susceptible to mental illness, cardiovascular disease, and cancer in the long term. So 8 hours of sleep is what you need. And that's how I end my day for productivity. So shut it down properly. No electronics 1 hour before bed. I call that a digital sunset. And then 8 hours of sleep for the night. The way I start my day for productivity the next day is I start with exercise. So I'm in the gym. I've finished my workout by 7 a.m. every day, and I'm on my way back home then. And when you work out in the morning, when you work out, you get a 12-hour mood boost. Now, I like to, equivalent in strength to an antidepressant. So I like to kind of pop that pill, if you will, in the morning rather than before going to bed. And why is that important for productivity? Well, if you're in a good mood and you have that energy that you've gotten from working out, then you're going to be more productive, right? You're going to be more energized. It's just common sense, really. Last but not least, in the morning, I start my day creatively before reactively. So I do not start my day in my inbox, on social media, reading the news, or on any collaboration apps like Slack or, Trello or anything else. I start doing one of those top 3 things that I decided the night before. And that makes the day feel so much more productive when I start it in that way. And then last but not least, during the course of the day, I really focus on single tasking. So if I'm doing something, one task at a time. There's some startling data that relates to this. So the average person loses 28% of their workday from jumping around from one thing to the next and not properly finishing something, right? Sometimes they jump away to a meaningless task like checking their LinkedIn feed or Facebook or Instagram, or to another less important task. And all that jumping around leads to a 28% loss in the day. Now that might not sound like much because you think, I got the next day. It's fine. But no, this is happening every day. And so when we extrapolate that across a year, the average person loses an entire calendar quarter or 13 weeks a year. So why is this a productivity booster? Well, don't you think you'd be less stressed and you'd be getting more done if you were playing with 4 quarters in your game instead of 3? And most people, though, they lose that entire 13 weeks. Now, extrapolated across a career, over 40 years, the average person is losing a decade. So that's 2 extra careers potentially. So yeah, combination of that evening routine, morning routine, and then single tasking throughout the day. That's what I recommend to really improve productivity.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. And I couldn't agree more. It's actually common sense and quite simple ways to. It's super easy to implement it, at least in my opinion. And people sometimes, they want to have a quick hack or give me the magic pill or, to give me a quick hack on how I could save much more time or be more productive by just doing that, being disciplined, knowing what you will accomplish on the day, sleep, exercise, shut down everything an hour before sleep. That's already a tremendous help. So you've mentioned earlier, I think just what anti-fragility or anti-fragile. Mm-hmm. And when you said that, and I'm sure you know him, it reminded me of Nassim Nicholas Taleb's book.
Yeah.
So is it actually connected or?
Yeah. Completely,
Okay.
Yeah. Completely connected to that. With the idea being that we need to take what he wrote there, which is quite deep and can take a while to get through, and we need to just distill that down into something super practical and simple that we can use in daily life. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the concept of anti-fragility, it just simply means that there are certain things which actually benefit from chaos or stress. That stress builds strength. One of those things is the human body. So when we stress a muscle, it causes it to grow. When we expose, the immune system to germs and bacteria, that's what builds the immune system, right? UV radiation, small doses, actually repairs tissues and generates vitamin D. So stress builds strength physically. So we're doing this already within our bodies. So we just need to get it up here in our heads mentally. So what does that mean then? If we're to become anti-fragile, whereby the more things that don't go our way, or the more pain we experience, or the more hardship we experience, the stronger we become. If we're to become anti-fragile, it means that we need to reframe our view of stress. Again, this is for the mind, right? When's the last time, for example, you walked into the gym and you said, can you please point me in the direction of the most comfortable weights? Or the most comfortable, show me a routine that it's just super comfortable. Like I don't want it to be exhausting in any way. I don't want it to stress me. Can you show me that routine, please? Well, that's a recipe to actually not develop anything health-wise, right? So that doesn't work. So we intuitively understand this. We get this from a physical point of view. We need to get that mentally as well. And when you do that, it's quite liberating, because then in the course of your day, when things don't go your way, you just picture that as, okay, yeah, that's just like a weight being handed to me in the gym of life. And I can either complete the repetition and step towards it, or I can run out of the gym screaming, pulling my hair out, and everyone would be like, what's wrong with you? Right? So that's quite liberating, because and there's subtle differences here between resilience and anti-fragility, because sometimes people confuse these words. Resilience, by definition, just means that you absorb shock and you return to the same. So the equivalent of that would be, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to do exercises such that my body composition absolutely does not change in any way whatsoever, and I stay exactly as I am. Now, some people may have that as a goal, but rarely do they have that as a goal. Usually they're there to kind of improve in some way. So anti-fragile is different, whereby, the more shock to the system, the stronger you become. You return beyond to a place, that's beyond where you started from. And it shows up in language, right? So if I hear someone say, I'm good at handling stress, or I'm good at processing stress, that's resilient speak. If someone were to say to me, I embrace stress, I run towards it, that's anti-fragile speak. Again, we do this physically. We are doing the equivalent of running towards stress, of embracing stress, by the mere fact that we step foot in the gym. So we do this already. Let's go back to the identity piece. You do this already. You did it as a kid. I'm not trying to teach you something new. I'm trying to get you to remember back to who you used to be, whereby your behavior followed the identity that you decided to change yourself into. It's the same here. We're doing this physically. We just need to get it up in our head mentally. Why is this powerful? Well, if we choose the best version of ourselves and we operate from that vantage point, identity-wise, not good enough, because we could just sit on the sofa and not do anything. Then step 2, if we optimize that version of us for action, productivity-wise, great. Now we're getting a lot of stuff done. What's the problem though? The problem, like Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. So the problem is that things rarely go to plan. The norm is things do not go to plan. Not always in a macro way, but very often micro. So if we can actually look forward to that, expect it, embrace it, run towards it, and just treat it as a natural part of life mentally, then no matter what happens, we'll stay the course and eventually operate at our peak level.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I think it's also Mike Tyson, or maybe his trainer. He had a amazing trainer and a warrior with a warrior mindset, but he said, you no longer exist, only the task exists. So I will always remember that when I do my crazy workouts. But
Yeah.
I agree with you totally. It's amazing how going through even physical challenges, you become much more calmer. Your mental cognition, I think, increases. And by just adopting a certain lifestyle and introducing behavioral tools and these tremendous ways to improve your life, improve your state and how you react. So I think anti-fragility, like resilience, is a byproduct of anti-fragility. You seeking the stress, healthy stress, and then of course you balance it with rest, because there's no performance without rest, and we know that. But yeah, I think it's actually, to be honest, quite refreshing hearing that from a leader, because sometimes we just focus on sort of theoretical things and the buzzwords. And I think you have such a great wisdom, to be frank, in all things that you say. It's practical, it makes sense, and it's proven by the science. So tell me, how is it like to work with Eric? I think you have a couple of clients. You start by going to the gym first things first, lifting some weights at 6 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Give us an insight, on how you work with your clients, and that I'm curious to hear that.
Yeah, so it depends. So if it's a founder, CEO, then I look at helping them scale three things in parallel. So one is their business. And there I'll just draw on whatever experience is most relevant, whether it's strategy from my McKinsey days, whether it's rapid execution from the Skype blitzscaling days, or whether it's people management. I hired over 2,000 people with Chilango, so I know a thing or two about managing people. And I also work with them on their leadership. So are they, it's one thing to start a company as a founder, it's another to scale, one as a CEO. Are they working well with others? Are they as decisive as they need to be? Are they able to step into those difficult conversations? Are they building out the team around them that can eventually do all the key roles within the company? Are they providing that vision for the company? The growth that's required? Are they aware of their own blind spots, and do they know how to work on them, whether from an EQ point of view or a more technical point of view? So yeah, a combination of things there to help them cross the chasm, from founder to CEO, or if they already have been in the CEO role for a while, well then just to help them continuously improve. And then last but not least, help them in parallel build a better version of themselves. So there I take a holistic approach and really challenge them to come up with goals on not just the work front, but also on the health front, around sleep, nutrition, exercise, mental clarity. Also have them think about relationship goals. What does best look like with the people that mean the most to them, or on the home front, and how close are they to living that? How congruent are they on a daily basis to acting in accordance with that? None of it's about them being perfect, but it is about providing that support and the accountability so that they make more progress than they would if they were doing it all on their own. So, in summary, I help them build a better version of themselves, become a better leader, and scale their company at the same time.
That's awesome. And I really like the holistic approach, because we are not, we're not a product, meaning we operate in an ecosystem, whether it's at work, at home, in our communities, outdoor, indoors, you name it. We are one, and having, I think, this holistic approach makes sense. And that probably says a lot about your program, definitely. So, I mean, you have such a great background and interesting profile, Eric, and I want to ask you about your relationship to ambition and what it means to you and how you use it when, working in programs.
Yeah, well, ambition for me is the creative sauce of life. I mean, it's the beautiful thing about ambition is, I mean, so many amazing things happen when we think big. When we think big, it forces us, without doing anything else, the very act of thinking ambitiously, thinking big, forces you to commit before you're ready. And why is that important from an achievement point of view? Well, because one of the things that I see holding people back is they say, I'm not ready yet. I haven't done that yet. I need to speak to a few more people. I need to take another course. I need to practice a little bit more. It's not perfect yet. I can't release this yet. I can't ship this yet. And the beautiful thing about thinking big is that when you truly think big, like real big, there's no way, you have to commit before you're ready because it's just too big, right? So when we were building Skype, our tagline at the time was the whole world can talk for free. That was well beyond anything that we could possibly actually achieve. But it prompted us to just get started. Also thinking big, it gets you dreaming. And when we dream effortlessly as kids, we lose that somewhere along the way. But when we dream, it puts a smile on your face. It gets you excited, and it makes it easier to work towards whatever it is that inspires you. Another benefit of thinking big, thinking ambitiously is it forces you to take massive action, right? Because big thoughts, big ambitions require commensurate effort. And too often, a lot of the action that we take on a daily basis, it's not really moving the needle. It's not bold enough. And the reason it's not bold enough is because there's nothing pulling it. There's nothing that's, driving the productivity. And when we think big, that changes. But another important thing too about thinking big, thinking ambitiously is it forces you to confront your deficiencies, because you most certainly, when you think really big, will suddenly realize that, the current me doesn't have what it takes. That's great, because then that points you into the direction of where you need to develop. Sometimes that development needs to happen internally, right? The current you needs to progress or get better in a certain area. But a lot of times it just simply means, who do you need to be adding to the team? You don't need to change yourself. You just need to be complementing yourself with a set of skills and perspective that you don't currently have. So there's loads of benefits from thinking ambitiously, thinking big, and that's just a handful.
Awesome, thank you. And what is inspired you in your life, in your work, in everything? I can give you a quick example. It could be a thing, it could be someone, it could be so for instance, if I had to choose one thing, the core, I would choose sports. I grew up since little doing sport. It taught me so much about myself, but others, brought values into my life. It allows me to become a better person to others, and it's just that plays such an important part in my life, and I love it so much. So what is your thing that really is so close to your heart and core and your soul, so to speak, that helped you so much in your life, or something that inspires you?
It's a phrase, and it's from a guy named John Burroughs. And he said, leap and the net will appear. And I love it, because the first half of my career, I wasn't leaping. The first half of my career, I wasn't, thinking ambitiously. I was always wanting to be a little bit more ready. That doesn't happen anymore. People offer an opportunity for me to do something I've never done before. I say yes, I commit. I publicly book myself in. And then I look at the calendar and go, okay, I got 3 weeks to figure this out. So leap and the net will appear. That's my guiding light, because it's a way for me to constantly manufacture or create necessity in my life. Necessity really is the mother of invention. And when you create mechanisms around you, or you agree to things before you're ready, it just forces you to take these non-linear jumps. And that's where the development happens. I'm not a big believer in the little by little by little. I mean, yeah, I get it mathematically, it's kind of nice to say just improve 1% every day. I just don't think it's real though. 1%. Okay, well, what was your 1% like versus the last day? Like, do you even know? Right. So to me, it's more, no, that's not really how life goes. It's a nice thing to say. It sounds nice. And we can do the equation. We can come out to like, oh my gosh, 37 times better by the end of the year, or whatever it comes out to. But it's about smelling out, searching for those nonlinear jumps, those big spikes that force you into a whole new path of development. That's really what it's about. So I constantly look for those big moves that I can take through life.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, you have to, so I guess you probably also use some, I guess, your gut instinct, and in addition to moving purposefully and I guess rationally. But I like your approach. It's interesting. So do you have any, I guess, then with that mindset and ways of seeing life and goals and how you can progress and move forward, do you have any key moments that have changed the course of your life and give you like proper lessons and practical takeaways for each of them?
Yeah. Oh gosh, so many.
Maybe you can choose one big
Yeah,
one or two.
so many. The book I wrote, was an example. So I had written a cookbook before, but I hadn't written a book on personal development. So when I wrote the 3 alarms, I didn't think I was ready for it, but I just committed to it and I did it, regardless. And by just committing, and I created that necessity around it. So I committed to writing the book because a friend of mine who was running an event said, unless you have a book, I can't let you come and speak on stage at my event. So I had to have the book kind of started and written and published in 10 months. And we did that, and we got it done. We had this massive necessity that was, forcing us to get done in, within a certain period of time. And then that led to another thing. A friend of mine said, Eric, do you have the book as a course? And I said, no. And he said, well, can you just come on to this event that I'm doing and talk about the course and promote it? And so I did that, but I didn't really have a course yet. And I talked about the course and promoted it, and 30 people bought the course. And then I had to quickly, make the course, out of off the back end of that as a result of the book. And of the 30 people who took, actually it was 32, I'll be perfectly frank, 2 asked for refunds, but 2 out of 32 isn't bad. 30 absolutely loved it. They said it was absolutely life-changing. And that prompted me to now get into the course business. And I can see huge opportunity for getting more people through that. It's called the Peak Performance Masters Program. So getting them through that program, which is essentially helps them really embed these principles around identity, productivity, and anti-fragility, but in a more handheld way. So yeah, that was a big moment for me. Deciding to write that book has led to so many things. And it's a perfect example too of it's impossible until you do it. So many people probably have a book in them and they think, oh, I'm not the person who can write a book. I never thought I was a writer. I never thought I could write a book. I did it. You can do it.
Cool. Awesome, Eric. So you've mentioned Peak Performance Master Program. Any projects that you would like to share with our listeners, upcoming projects, or what's in your world right now or in the near future?
I think I think the simplest way to stay in touch, if somebody, I send one simple, I call it a peak performance insight, one super simple practical thing that you could apply in your life for immediate benefit. I send one of those a week, and you can join that list. Just go to my website, Eric with a C, ericpartaker.com, and and you can subscribe right there. It's a way to stay in touch. It's not meant to be a one-way broadcast. You can literally hit reply on any of the emails and I'll reply to you. But yeah, that would be the simple way to stay in touch. And then you'd be obviously kept aware of any, future programs as well.
Sweet. I'll make sure I'll subscribe and have a look. You will be, I have just a handful of your subscription. I'm not a fan of newsletter. Like you will be the next to Tim Ferriss and, many of us, but I like your work and hence why we're chatting today. So I'll definitely have a look. I have a last question for you. And I always ask this question to my guests and maybe you've answered it already in some shape and form, but Eric, what are the skills and character traits that helped you so far in your life?
I'd probably say the biggest thing has been my determination. So nothing in my life has ever gone to plan. Nothing. And I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to just relish in that. Like, I'm like, yes, another thing not going to plan. It's like, fantastic. This is great. And yeah, and it's just so liberating to think in that way, It's like, yeah, that determination that, yeah, even if things don't go to plan, it doesn't matter. I'll weave a new direction, a new path, a new way, and the end result will be as good or better. And I'll have some wonderful war stories to share along the way.
Thank you so much. I think it's a great way to end the show. It's been amazing talking to you today. Thank you for the insights, and I'm sure our listeners will really appreciate everything that you shared with us today. So thank you.
Thank you very much as well. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Mind Narrative podcast. If you enjoy the content, we welcome your support by contributing on Patreon. Find out more at mindnarrative.co.uk. Bye.